And I will make our request that if you aren't a subscriber to our YouTube channel, please consider doing that or making a donation for the class. We're working towards having permanent space again, and in the meanwhile, taking up as much real estate online as possible. So any support we can get would be excellent. So tell me, Joel, what's your background with astrology?
I don't have very much
No.
actually. So
What's your
this would be actually
curiosity?
first class. Yeah, it's more curiosity.
Cool. Anything in particular you're interested in?
I've actually been looking at the natal charts. Those are really
Cool.
cool. I'd like to
Cool.
learn more about that.
Cool. Right. I know Wendy's an old hat at the class. What's your focus, Brandon? I've seen you before in class, haven't I?
Yeah, no. I've just always loved it. I always found it, very fascinating, and then the more I got into tarot, I started also like getting more into it and connecting it that way.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I'm still kind of just learning it myself, and yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I've also been kind of curious to kind of try to maybe like get my son's chart done from you.
Cool. Well, I'm always looking for volunteers for charts to put up so that I can talk about different things about charts. So I got to share the screen on my iPad. I just recently got new astrology software. My computer died a while ago, and with that went my old astrology program, which they'd stop improving, which is a very sad thing because it was a really nice program, but had great graphics. But once I get that up there, especially if y'all are focused on natal charts, we can just look at a couple different ones of folks who are here, and maybe your child, how old is he? You're muted.
Oops, he's 4 months old.
Oh wow, well that's fun. It's all theoretical at that point.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah.
But it can be really nice to like have some clues about how to approach people as they grow. I've done charts for people who are tiny folks, and it's fascinating to meet them as they grow up. So yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and get into my software and see if I can get this shared with you all so that you can see what I'm working with. All right, so our first glyph is the sun. So I recommend grabbing a piece of paper and a pencil. When I started studying astrology when I was about 10 years old, and it engaged me in my my knowledge of mythology that I'd started getting when I was a little kid in my reading books at school. So I was so excited to learn something that was like a secret code. So to get these, like to recognize, this is the sun, to be able to draw it. This is a shorthand, and what you'll get from it eventually is the sense of the ability to read the Thelemic calendar, because you can represent any time very, very accurately by looking at the degrees of a sign that the sun is in, the degrees that the moon is in, and then the ascendant of whatever's going on. And these are the basic things that we look at when we're doing someone's astrological chart. So the sun, I mean, everybody knows what their sun sign is. That fits for a whole month. The moon, we go through all of the signs within the month. So one more, we'll do one more sun. My circles are not very circular today, but there you go. And then the moon, as you might guess, it's a piece of the moon. And so we think about the sun being kind of I always say it's what you see about somebody in the daylight. What shows when someone looks at you in the daylight. The moon is what shows in the darkness. And that to me is it's about our emotional self. The sun is a bit more about our, how do we travel through life? What's our basic strategy? So we have 10 basic planetary forces is the term that Astrology likes. I like that. It gives us a kind of a feel for how they impact us in our lives. So we have, like I said, the sun, the moon, Mercury. Come on. Mercury, which is that circle with the cross. Now, I think this is interesting. Again, Astrology talks about the symbols. We see the circle as a sphere of experience. Same with the sun. This is really focused on our sphere of experience. The cross as like setting us physically in a space and time. And then in this case with Mercury, we've got also, it's like a moon on the side, set on the side. Anybody know any of the stories about Mercury from Roman mythology? There's one I always like the best, but Mercury, and this is interesting because you see the Venus symbol here, should be familiar, which is the symbol that's most often used to designate female, with the moon on the top. But Mercury is considered to be a male character, but really hermaphrodite, so with both genders. So Mercury is a force that is balanced in terms of gender, but I always like the story that I like is the trickster aspect, and that they say that Mercury, they were always trying to get Mercury to do things, like to kind of kowtow and be a part of the structure of the family and, follow the rules and do the stuff. And Mercury was having none of it and liked to play tricks. And Apollo had these cattle that he was extremely proud of, and Mercury stole the cattle, but what he did was he made them all walk backwards. So they kept hunting and hunting and hunting, but they were really going the other way. So anyway, it to me that really speaks to the ways that people get really wound up about Mercury going retrograde. People get so, it's like, it's Mercury retrograde that made this problem. It's that everything's going backwards. Everything's going to be bad. It's wrong. And, anyway, it just goes on and on. I think it's pretty silly. I think it's pretty superstitious personally, but if in that story, I just think of, it's kind of like the trickster aspect energetically. Mercury is not going backwards. None of the planets move backwards. They're in space and time. They're always moving in the direction that they're intending to move. But from our viewpoint, it looks like it's going backwards. So we're the ones playing the trick on ourselves. We've decided that we've invested this sense of this power to this force, this mercurial force, and then decided that if it goes backwards, then things are going to be problematic. So anyhow, there you go. So Mercury. And then we have Venus, and I'm doing this in the order of how far they are away from the sun. So Venus, again, we have this sphere of experience connected to a physical location, the cross. So the more you do of them, the better they get. But I am just getting used to this Apple Pencil thing. There we go. That's a pretty good one. So Venus, and then we have Mars, and everybody knows Mars. Again, that sphere of experience with the arrow coming off of it. So it's about the motion in this case. Mars is about movement. So sphere of experience, moving. This always makes me think about sperm. Eggs and sperm. There you go. All right. And then after this, somewhere, I think Earth is somewhere between Venus and Mars, but and it's usually a cross. Come on. Cross with a circle in the chart. It's called a part of fortune. You'll see that often in the chart. And then Jupiter, let's see, it's that big 4. It's all fancy 4. Can make it kind of stylized if you want, but that's the basic image you'll get. You'll see when you look at astrology programs, you'll see them. It'll get all curly-cued and whatnot, but and then we have Saturn, which again has a cross on it. So that sphere of experience, location of experience, with a kind of a loop-de-loop coming off of it. I'm doing these are not the best ones I've ever done, but you kind of get the feel for it. You'll see it different when folks, when you look at an astrology program. Do any of you have any astrology software that you use? Because I'll go ahead, Joel.
No, but I was wondering if maybe you had like some advice on some places where I've found like free charts online, but that's about
Yeah,
it.
you can totally do that. And that's probably the easiest thing to do to start. There are lots of apps that you can even put on your phone, and some of them are a little more pricey and some of them are, close to free. Mostly if you are getting any kind of an interpreter with it, so like if you're getting the answers to what it means, then you're probably going to have to pay for it. So the actual like machinery to calculate it is going to be closer to free, because it's not that complicated. Once you've got the ephemeris, which is all of the information about what's going on in the sky, you kind of plug it in and it creates the image for that time. And you can have nicer graphics or less complicated graphics. I personally, the software I had, I really liked. I liked because I could look at it and I could scry on it. Having a software picture, having the style of the glyphs be something that you recognize and feels comfortable to look at is probably an important part. Now, I've been an astrologer for a really long time. I've done it professionally and stuff. So it was a little bit more of there was a little more high stakes for me in that. But I used to I started off calculating them on my own. I'm old enough that there weren't little handheld computers when I was a kid. So I was going into my astrology books and figuring out what the degrees were. And I recommend it, actually, anybody who really wants to have a clear sense of what's going on. with a chart, it helps to go through all of those steps to create it, to understand why actually the computer software is so lovely. It's the first computer I ever got was because I wanted to do astrology, and I didn't want to have to sit down and calculate every single chart. I wanted to have them just given to me. And so anyway, there are a few. The one that I'm using, two of them that I like. Time Passages has very simple simple additions and Ephemeris is one that you can get to put on your phone. Now I'm using Apple products, so but most of these make versions for Apple and for Windows. So so that's my suggestion there. It's nice not to have to go hunting online, but also, I mean, it is a little bit of an investment. If you get something that's for the laptop or the desktop, it's probably going to cost you a little bit more. The Time Passages is like $80 for the basic one, and so that's an investment. If you do anything with it, like I've always written my software off because I would do readings for people, so it kind of ends up being a wash. But if you're not going to do that, then probably I would go with a smaller investment, because it and then there's a book that I recommend to people. It's called Astrology for Yourself. I personally think the best way to learn astrology is through your own chart. We all have all of the planets in our chart. We have all of the signs in our chart. We have, all kinds of different transit situations, which is to say, whatever happens in the present time impacts different things in our chart. So it's a good window to begin to well, and frankly, it narrows things to. It's still an incredible amount of stuff to learn, but it narrows it and it focuses you on studying yourself, which I think as a magician is like, I mean, that's kind of one of our prime directives, if you will. We got to know ourselves, or, we're not going to be able to make our will manifest in the world. So do you have striped socks on, Wendy? No, that's a cat. Zoom and the cat. It's the joy of my life. Anyhow, so these that was a kind of a random smattering of information about different stuff. Was that helpful, Joel?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much.
Cool. Yeah, that book.
Astrology for Yourself.
Yeah, it's probably one of the cheaper things, and you can definitely get free apps. Cool. And I just look around for that. You'll get a feel for there are different glyph styles, there are different chart styles, all of that. And whatever you get accustomed to, you'll kind of get a feel for. And that's just where you start. I mean, it's like so many other things that we learn. You'll get when you start, there are so many different ways of studying things. Sometimes it's easier to just have the window narrowed a little bit. This is what is going on in the sky right now. And can you all see my cursor? Yeah, cool. All right. So, so this, if someone was being born right now, and there's someone out there being born right now, we know they are. There's so many people being born all the time. This would be their chart if they were being born right where my computer is, or somewhere fairly nearby. So so when we look at this picture, it's like a snapshot of all of the pieces of what this time is about. So when I said different ways that you could look, you could see this is the moon again. The sun's pretty similar to what I was drawing. There's Venus. It's Neptune. There's Saturn, that cross, and then the little thing coming off of it. Jupiter, the giant four. Like I said, it's got a little stylized, fancy schmancy. And then we have Pluto here, which is also very close to Jupiter. Yeah, we have a lot of stuff right connected here, and because of where this where the time it is, essentially this 9 o'clock position is completely impacted by what time it is. Everything is set on this chart by what time it is. So that is why when you do a natal chart, the birth time is probably the most important piece to know, that along with the location, what, to get the very specific sense of what somebody's natal chart looks like. Does this make sense? With me? Cool. Okay. So so if this is our mystery person's astrological chart, they're going to have a Cancer rising. So we didn't get to the glyphs of the signs, but this is Aries, so the ram, and Taurus, the bull, Gemini, and then Cancer. And Cancer, so we go through from these first four, we go through fire, earth, air, and water. We go through the three modes of expression, and then come back to the first one again: cardinal, fixed, mutable, and then cardinal again. So to kind of get a feel for what I mean about this, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and I say that based in the Thelemic idea of when the new year is, which is March 21st, the beginning of spring. So that's the beginning of the sign of Aries, that's just the beginning of the sign of Aries. And then each month each sign has 30 degrees. So if we look at this circle having 360 degrees, each house, and this can vary some, but each sign takes up 30 degrees. So, make sense? Yeah, cool. Thank you, Brandon. You're the only face I can see right now. If you understand, then I'm going to keep going. So that Aries, it does span between two of these houses. This graph that we're looking at is the astrological chart. Each section of it, each of these 12 sections is considered a house and is correlated with kind of a domain in our life, part of our experience. And the way I like to explain it, it's kind of like a flow chart moving from the most personal, most self-involved aspect of us all the way to the most impersonal and most dissolving aspect of our nature. So we move from ourselves and our nature, who am I? I think about the second house as, where I am, how do I manifest myself? So in the world, and that can be often represented by, what our home is like, what our values are around things, that sort of thing. And then the third house has to do with communication. So when we communicate, do we use language that is like a teacher and very, what's the word? Like scholarly, or are we trying to reach everybody and be easy to connect with? I mean, that's just a very simple way of breaking this down, but depending on what astrological sign is in there, that'll give it a character. So fourth house classically is connected with the mother and with home. So often you'll see, what's the quality of relationships you have with women. Similarly, the fifth house, relationships with men, it's considered the house of creativity, and often people will connect. My mom always said, she studied astrology before I did. She would always say, that's how many kids you're going to have. That's not going to be the case for all of us, but but you know, they could be our magical children, the things that we create that we leave our the impression of our lasting nature in the world through. So yeah, so fifth house, it connected to creativity on the physical level, on the spiritual level, all of the levels. And then the sixth house has to do with how we deal with business in the world. So this is one of those places where we're beginning to move, just like we do from here to here, from the vast expanse of consciousness into the identified and coalesced understanding of identity, of individual identity. Here we're moving from how we live, you know, how we take care of business relative to our health and to business, like, you know, paying bills and stuff, into this house, which has to do with our ability to connect with other people. So how we relate to the world for ourselves, and then how we relate to the world in a kind of an individual way. So I tend to think of this as like kind of the purity of relationship. What, you know, what do we, how do we connect on a very basic level with our fellows? Whereas like this house, the eighth house, is spirituality, sexuality, and transformation. This is way more, one of my favorite books that I studied the house systems from is called Spiritual Astrology. And they talked about looking at the first house to understand the seventh house. So you look at the first house and you understand identity from that. And then you look at identity of relationship. You understand the second house. And like I was saying, physical manifestation, or the way we represent ourselves in the world. This is the way we interact and connect with each other physically in the world. So how we impact each other. And that could be, you know, really in terms of relationship, it's when the relationship is more, becomes more physical than just like having a conversation with someone. And that, I mean, that could be, it could be lovers, it could be friends who you feel physically connected with. It could be, you know, somebody who gives you some kind of physical body work or something like that. There's a lot of ways that we interact in the world. Some people fight with a lot of people. You know, it could be through martial arts in a very connected, like conscious way, or it could be just picking fights with people. I mean, this house has there's a lot of potentials, and depending on which planets in there could have a lot of different ways it could be interpreted. Then the ninth house has to do with learning, I think, in a lot, mostly. It's really about how we understand where we are, how we acquire more knowledge about things, how we, you know, what our motivations are around like travel and exposing ourselves to new things. So ninth house is learning. I also like to look, now we've been through the first four, which are very much the personal expression, the second four, which are kind of that transition between how we relate to dealing with business of for ourselves and our own lives, and begin to interact with the rest of the world. And now we're in this last group, which tends to have a feel to me more like, so higher learning, if you will. The 10th house is how we're seen. What is our not our self-image, but our public image. And, you know, this is a thing that I think it's really interesting, because we don't, just because we may have this way that we are here doesn't mean that that's what people see about us. And again, using astrology as a way to understand yourself and the things that happen to you in your life, understanding discrepancies between what a personal experience might be versus what the world experience of you as a person is. So this is this is an interesting spot here. And then the 11th house, to me, it's really the people who we choose to surround ourselves with. It's more, while the 5th house maybe those maybe the family, the 11th house is our community. These are the people that we choose to be around, the people that feed us. A friend called them the water family. This is the blood family. This is the water family. And then as this is personal business, this to me, the 12th house is kind of embraces the, it's funny, it's like, it's the things about ourselves that we never get completely comfortable with. So like we can, the things that we're always trying to change or trying to sort out or fix about ourselves. And I always say this is like the blessing for magicians. Magicians don't want to get stuck with a continuous fixed idea of who we are. We want to be able to see ourselves transform and become, transform through initiation, transform through being impacted by our decisions, conscious decisions, unconscious decisions. But this particular location is the place of dissolution. And I think of that not so much as like you dissolve and you're dead, but those deaths are not necessarily permanent. That's not, it's not like, oh, you're dead now, in that, like, I don't know if any of you have read Terry Pratchett, but I always think about death manifested with this giant sigh, and then he's like, he shows up and he's got a very low voice and he's a soft-spoken, very kind individual. Takes you wherever it is you believe that you're going to go. And so this to me is kind of like that sense of death. It's like the death card in the tarot. We have to go through changes to be able to expand and change our consciousness. So this is our transformation of consciousness, our interface with the enormity of the universe and the I guess the insignificance of our particular manifestation. I think that we get very attached to who we think we are, but what the world needs, don't think it has a whole lot to do with what we get attached to. We have to be able to transform to be able to become what is needed. So from that very big, expansive, kind of amorphous place, then we move back again to the first house, which is, again, that coalesced kind of seed of consciousness. So I see someone has chatted me here. Let me see what you all have to say. Oh, all right. Say goodnight to Steve, 93. Maybe I'll see you on Thursday. Thanks for all your work. All right, so we've covered this kind of basic schematic. Now, depending on what's right here, all of these things can be ruled by different signs and different have different planets in them. People always ask, what does that mean if there's nothing in that house? What is that bad? People always ask, is that bad? No matter what you do. Well, and I always say, well, you got blue eyes. Is that bad? It's like, this is just how things are. Now, anytime that we have, we look at this like a natal chart, we're going to have also the comparison between this and what's going on in the moment. Now, this happens to be what's going on in the moment, but it also, if we thought about it like in that moment that we started it at 7 o'clock, or I guess it was 7:26 here, there is still a comparison to be made between what is happening on the graph and what's going on in the sky right now. What's going on in the sky right now is always changing. So I don't know about you, but that just makes me happy, because that is the essential truth of how the world works. No matter how terrible it seems like in any given moment, things are always going to change. Someone will always say it could get worse, but you can always find somebody who will say it can get better too. So, and it's probably usually a combination of the two. Anyhow, so from this, we can, so if we look at this, like, so there's nothing in the first house. Does that mean I don't have an identity? No, it means that when something passes through it on its, you know, as they, all of these planets do move, and the cycle of the zodiac keeps moving, there will be something that passes through here. There isn't any big thing to learn, or any big thing that is drawing specific light or attention. Like, I think about, you know, we can look out in the sky, if it's not raining like it is right now, but we can look out in the sky and see all of these bodies reflecting light. You know, we have Mars reflects back, and we can see that red planet. We can see the moon. We can see Venus. We can see the sun for sure, although we don't see it so much at night. But, you know, or Venus, Mercury, sometimes we can see. I think you can definitely see Mercury with and or Jupiter, you can see that often, but Mercury if you have a telescope. So we know these bodies out there, they reflect light. They have luminosity in our ability to perceive them. They also reflect the nature of the astrological, the constellations that are behind them, which is where we get the stories around the nature of each one of the signs. So we have this ability to connect with each of these, and they keep moving. And some of them, like for instance, Saturn, would take a long time to get through this house. We would be learning about the nature of Saturn and our identity for quite a while. We would be learning about the moon and this nature within a couple, 2 or 3 days. So one of the first things I recommend to people as a magician, but also as a, you know, as a learning astrologer, is to follow some of these cycles, keeping track of your own transits. So like, follow the moon. I have a little app on my phone that tells me whenever the sign changes, and I notice my emotional shifts as the signs change. Believe me, going from Pisces to Aries, which it did yesterday, there's a palpable difference. I have an Aries moon, and when the moon comes around to Aries, it gets a little sharper and a little, my temper is a little stronger and a little closer to the surface. So it's a thing to know. It's not that it's predictive or going to tell me what is going to happen, but it will give me a sense of the forces at play during any time that I might choose to do something. And this right here is a beautiful thing to use to choose times for doing ritual. You know, when I have a friend who's a magician friend who is just like, he's just immersed in the cycles of, it's almost hard to even explain the level of devotions that he has. He consecrates things at all times of the day and night, and creates talisman and all kinds of things using the planetary forces. Now, they're just out there waiting to be used. That again, that luminosity is just it's a force that you can draw on with, you know, doesn't cost anything. It's just there to help support whatever your will is. So again, we've talked a little bit about the houses here, the signs. We talked about the first four: fire, earth, air, water. It continues like that: fire, Leo; earth, Virgo; air, Libra; water, Scorpio here, and then Sagittarius, fire; Capricorn, earth; Aquarius, air, which is sometimes confuses people, and then water, Pisces. So that you can kind of look at the zodiac also as a movement from that very individual consciousness through a more expansive awareness, though the sun could be in Pisces. Pluto, which is got more of an expression of that expansiveness, could be in Aries. So there is a difference between the way the zodiac manifests and how the houses work. There, you will run across people who will say the first house is the Aries house, and I think it's a kind of a poor crutch for an astrologer, because you get the I mean, I've done it. It's because it's easy to explain some of the concepts, but remembering that this graph is empty and open until we lay these things over it. So the meanings that they have are domains of anyone's life, not specific natures. So we don't apply the elements or the modes of expression to the houses to find meaning. So anyhow, so cardinality, I'd like to talk a little bit cardinal, fixed, and mutable. I think of the three of them as being the cycle of life, or in the Wiccan tradition we talk maiden, mother, crone; in the Christian, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. These triplicities, the cardinality is the beginning. It's the push for things to start. Fixedness, or the cherubic signs, or sometimes you'll see them described, are they're the carrying through or the continuity. I think of the life cycle of a plant. The seed is that cardinality. You just add water and it begins to become what it is. The fixed nature is like the life cycle of the plant. It has this purpose of fruiting or whatever it does, and spreading its seeds. And you could think of this like an idea, or a plant, or a person, any number of different things. And then we have mutability, and mutability is letting go of specifics, the letting go of the details, well, not always the details, but the letting go of specific identity. So each one of the elements has a cardinal, a fixed, and a mutable sign. So in fire, we have Aries, we have Leo, and we have Sagittarius. So with Aries, we have the beginning of the cycle; Leo, the continuation, the force to keep things moving; and then Sagittarius, that dispersing and opening up to allow things to pass and move on. And I usually focus the class around the sign that we're in. We are in this Sagittarius right now, and that the energy of Sagittarius is really again that expansive, open, and it's the fire element. So we have the things that come to my mind around Sagittarius are the people that have the big ideas, the people who get lost considering and planning, and you can see my hands up here. It's the arrow. You see this symbol here? It's the it's the shooting out and looking out into the distance to find the answers to things that are in the nature of Sagittarius. Now, as with anything, if you focus completely up there and out there, you can lose track of what's happening on the ground. And that, we always have the things that you have to work with. And then, we have this kind of interesting flow as well. We have the Taurus or Aries Taurus. We go from this almost like intangible essence of spirit, the force of just existence, to Taurus, which is the physical, like bringing back to that cross of being in a location, in a like affixed to a time, a local time and a local place. So that we go through this kind of a cycle, and Sagittarius moves into Capricorn. So you go from that big, open, expansive planning place to how do we make it happen on the ground, using the forces of the earth element to transform things and make things happen. So, and that's the again expansive. Oh goodness, find the word, please. Mutable nature into the cardinal earth nature of Capricorn. So we have these relationships that have to do with the elements, and then you have the kind of almost yin yang back and forth between each one of the signs, moving from a more volatile, more the fire or the air into the water or the earth. So the more yin yang to the yin to the yang to the yin, which is just inherent in the nature of life. Again, everything changes, things shift. So I offered to do a chart for somebody. So what I'd like to do now is to look at your son's chart. So it'll be close to where we are right now. So it might be kind of interesting if I can, come back to this. I don't know how this thing works very well. So we have, what is this person's name?
Valentine.
Valentine. What a great name.
Yeah.
Aw, is that Valentine?
Yeah, that's Valentine.
Okay, I'm gonna put S in. Is that correct for a last name?
Yeah.
Starting of it? Okay.
Yep.
And so that's good. And then where was Valentine?
In Hawaii. In Maui.
It goes
Okay.
by
Oh, the town.
Haiku.
And the what was it?
In Hawaii, haiku.
What's the name of how do you spell haiku?
Haiku.
Oh, okay. Let's see if we've got it in here.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. And the date?
It was July 6th at 7:30 p.m.
6th. 7:30 p.m. Okay. All right. Let's look at Valentine's chart.
Yeah.
So Valentine is not short of things in the first house. So as we were saying, and then this is Capricorn, which is the that earth sign that I was talking about, where we'll be headed into Capricorn on the winter solstice. And that Valentine was born when Jupiter and Pluto, and well, in this case, this is an asteroid I'm not going to bug you with, but Jupiter and Pluto were conjunct and retrograde and also close to Saturn. So this is a time that very much is the manifestation of the kind of the state of the world, like that, being somebody who comes out of a time of great unrest in the world. I actually am one too. The 60s and all of the stuff going on with the wars and social unrest, it can manifest it personally as being a person that can find themselves in internal turmoil and sometimes conflict. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But it is a thing to watch if you're the person's parent, because being able to give them a place that feels solid to grow into who they are, where that kind of unrest of around their identity and whatnot, that's internal, is it's not the only experience they have of how life is. Do you follow? So this is so Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn being in very much the same place in a very basic way. That is the way the world impacts you, the ways that you expand and grow, and the ways that you are constricted, and the lessons that you have to learn, having almost the same nature.
Okay.
Which is, I have a little bit of this in my chart. It can be so I have a square between my Jupiter and my Saturn. The things that are good for me are almost always in conflict with the things that are hard and I have to learn from. So there's never like an internal ease about settling in. Oh, this is good. Everything, and this is going to be in the first house. This is the person's identity. All of these things are going to be double and triple edged. Do you get it? Could be a person also who becomes very known in the world. Having Pluto in the first house is a pretty it makes you seen. I always say it's kind of like walking with the gods. You don't really get a whole lot of space from being noticed. And awesome. Yeah, it can be rough actually.
Isn't it saying it's awesome, but not without trial?
Yeah.
It can be really hard as a little person, to have that kind of attention. And then the moon is in Aquarius here. So there's also in the first house is a person who emotionally may appear distant and but is a very loving force in the world. So yeah. Oh, is that you? We get to see you while I talk about you. Hi, Valentine. So we've got the moon here. The sun is over here in Cancer. So all of these things are going to be things that Valentine feels. Cancer is it's like having a tender antenna out in the world. And I would say that knowing that it's in the 6th house, I would look at his digestion, watch his digestion, because that's going to be a thing that is going to be impacted by being in a state of stress. Now, this happens with people a lot, but with cancers, it's even more intense. So that is also connected with Vesta. So, you might end up being a nutritionist. It may be a thing that you know, that personal experience of following the ability to digest the world will become a thing that's a tool for him for how to interact with the world as well. So those are both direct. So well, Sun's always direct, but Vesta is also direct, not necessarily always direct though. So Vesta is like the place, the fire that you keep burning in your life always. It's a place that is particular and important, even if it's not the central purpose of who you are. It's the place that you keep adding fuel to, and that is very close to the sun sign here. So for all of this Capricorn over here that is in opposition to this or close to, and very motivated and very businesslike and very, you know, like I said, gonna push Valentine out into being seen, although it is all retrograde, man. Yeah, hopefully he'll be seen well. He'll be seen by himself at least. So this, but he's gonna have this feeling of what's going on in the world that I think could end up being a very important guide. Now, Mercury is also here in Cancer, which it is usually fairly close to the sun, as we would expect from looking at our solar system. So, but it is retrograde. So while that is, you know, expressing things emotionally, it would be his nature, or his nature. Hey. Woo, because it's retrograde, it might be sometimes hard to get it out of him. I would look to learning ways to express, like through music, through art of different kinds, see what he's drawn to, so that he has ways of you know, poetry could be a thing. So he has ways to express what his emotional experience is that aren't necessarily in words. It could be in color, and that's kind of what I'm getting from this. So the South Node, communication is kind of the point of being here on the planet for him. So learning how to communicate and be able to move through the kind of the mundane world and be, you know, have that move smoothly is really, you know, the South Node is really that place where we have the North Node is what we bring in with us as native abilities. And so being a student, being a philosopher, that sort of thing is going to be very natural to him, but being learning how to just deal with the kind of the mundane things of the day-to-day world is going to be a little more like what he's here to work on. And this is a strange one because there's a lot more prestige to being a philosopher in this world and being connected with like lofty thoughts and all of that, to be brought back to kind of the here and now and what's important in this moment. People who, you know, who have law degrees who end up working at a, you know, as bartenders or something. It's sometimes you see that kind of a situation, someone who needs to have well, like I love to study and I love to think and write and all of that, but for my work I need things where I have my hands on something, and I end up, that's what I end up teaching and whatnot. I teach massage and I teach palpation and I teach acupuncture, and so to have that experience of knowing that doing the basic things in the world is just as important as being smart, you know, that being in the 12th house, that sense of like accomplishment intellectually could be a thing that makes him uncomfortable and down the road as well. So anyhow, Neptune in Pisces, Neptune is like kind of our generational connection, and to have it in Pisces is like to kind of have a like the finger on the pulse, the in the wind, to know what's going on in the world in a very deep, intuitive way. But then Mars and Aries, this is going to be a very physically, well, hopefully, ideally, a very physically, like robust person, be physically strong and able to, you know, like to meet the world with, in strength. So maybe sometimes a little bit head on and kind of hard, but because the Aries does tend to wallop its head, especially as children. But just to know that like the benefit of this particular situation is to be able to you know, is to be physically strong, and especially the blood is strong, the iron in the blood, that kind of thing. So, but it could be because it's in the third house. This is about communication, you know, being maybe blunt or maybe not communicating the sensitivity that he has. He may be misunderstood. His actions may not always represent the level of connection he has to what's going on around him. So we saw this Mars and Aries in the demonstrations happening, you know, and that to have that be a piece of someone in their nature that that it's hard for them to sit still when they need to express something to get it to change. There's a lot of strength there, but also it's martial. There's conflict there as well. Right nearby that is Chiron, and Chiron is about healing. Chiron in Aries is really healing through understanding one's identity. I've seen this also interpreted recently as the ways that we sabotage ourselves. So I think that it can be a little bit of both. They say wounded healer. So what is our primary wound? It is this, in this case, it would be this kind of impetuous, like pushy physical way of being, but it also is that physical expression of strength that is going to be beneficial in the long run. So Venus in Gemini in the fifth house. So Venus again is about relationship, but I tend to think of it not specifically as like intimate partnership, but it's just how you interact with people. And I mean, I could see someone doing poetry readings with this particular thing. The Venus in Gemini, the like expressing beauty through words and through communication, and that being in the fifth house of creativity, like the maybe writing books or about art, or who knows, you know, there's so many possibilities with the baby. It's really important to not get attached to any particular thing. But I will say up here we have Juno, and Juno is intimate partnership, and it's in Libra. So, and it's very, very well aspected here. So I wouldn't worry about him finding people to connect with. I think that that'll be part of your life path, dear heart. Part of your life path. So that's a kind of a deep and brief. What do y'all, how does that sound with your 4-month experience?
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you have a really cool person you're living with there.
Yeah.
Well, he's crawling at 4 months old, so this kind of makes sense in a weird way.
Yeah, that Mars and Aries is gonna just push him. I want to go.
That's exactly,
Yeah.
he hates being held like a baby. Unless
Yeah, and then with all of this Capricorn, it's like you want to put a card on him because he wants to do work. He wants to get something done.
Literally,
So,
yeah. Even at 4 months old, you can see that. That's hilarious. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
thank
cool.
you.
Oh,
It's
you're totally welcome.
the chart in depth like that, more like a story as opposed to just, points on a chart.
Yeah, well, and to me, it's fun, when you look at all of these pieces, the lines in the middle, you start seeing how the parts of someone are connected. So it does become a story. And yeah, and like this big triangle, this big blue triangle that's connecting the intimate relationships, the communication in relationships, and the moon in Aquarius is like the words are so important. He's probably going to talk early too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, you might even think about teaching him sign language because that can really help like the frustration of not being able to get the body to do stuff and being able to begin to express stuff. And it doesn't, nobody has to be perfect with it. You don't have to be able to communicate really major complex things, but for a baby to be able to say, I want this versus this. I want I'm hungry, I'm not thirsty, I'm some of that stuff, it gives them they say it helps with their ability to do math, but it gives them a much more clear sense of personal like agency.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
no,
that's
totally.
great. We did it with my little brothers, so it's something that I've
Yeah.
thought about. So
Cool.
totally. We'll just start now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got some words about that, it sounds like.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
I think that's kind of where I'm gonna pause for the class unless do you all have any questions about this?
No, thank you. I actually learned a lot today just from
Cool.
this class.